Fix the Mix Challenge Day 2. Who's ready to rock? Who had fun on Day 1? Was it enlightening? Did you have fun with the homework? Did you get something new out of it? That's what it's all about, right? Some of it you may have already known. Maybe you got some new things. Maybe it was totally new to you. Maybe you're a beginner. Everyone's at a different level. All of it's good. We're just trying to learn. We're trying to grow. And again, my hat's off to all of you who take the time to come out to try to be better, to improve. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us for a few days.
That's pretty cool. Kristen said, yesterday changed the game for me. Thank you.
Awesome.
Right.
Just getting started.
I did see a lot of positivity in the chat yesterday. A lot of people picking up on new stuff. A lot of people getting some mindset stuff, which is the most important. It's not about the little tips and tricks. It's about overall mindset. I think the way that we're teaching this helps you compartmentalize the process better, helps you focus better. It helps you work with a lot more intention. It helps you not get so lost sometimes in the mix. It keeps your head straight. I think that's valuable. Again, in terms of introductions, my name is Caleb Lovelace, Director of Education for Mastering.com. We have Mr. Jake Codeweiss giving out free shrugs today. Give us your best shrug. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh, all right.
We got Michael Gilbride in the Mastering.com hoodie. He's the reason you're all here, sending emails out, sending texts out, blowing up your phones.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Michael.
Same hoodie as yesterday. For those playing along.
We're just treading water right at this point and just trying to not drown.
You're tickling my funny bone today.
I'm barely surviving over here.
just treading water, man. For what it's worth, I have the same hoodie on as well. We don't sleep or eat. Rob Mazes, who's on the bottom, actually has us all locked in our basements. We're not allowed to leave.
I'm in my basement too.
Fresh t-shirt though.
He's a masochist.
Fresh t-shirt, yeah.
He locks himself in his own basement, but that's just a matter of how hard we work for all of you, so you can be here to hang out with us. So anyway, if you missed yesterday, those are introductions. And again, to our sponsor, thank you so much to JZ Microphones. They're so cool, some of these microphones. I've been reading more about them. They have some really, really cool features, cool things. I want to try some of these out. Michael, get on that.
Grease stuff.
Make that happen.
That's why Caleb does this job.
Grease some palms for me, buddy.
I get nothing.
Even if not, 50% off is pretty great. We never hardly ever see 50% off like hardware from some of these sponsors. I think it's a great deal. So go check them out, jzmike.com. Code mastering50 gets you 50% off until October 3rd. Yeah, definitely go grease some palms for me, would you?
If people don't buy from our partners, we're going to have to start charging for these. So go buy a microphone.
For sure. All right, day one action items. I hope you all had the opportunity to do this with one of your tracks that maybe you've been working on, or if you wanted to go to Cambridge and grab one of their multi-tracks. I don't know if you're familiar with Cambridge. I'm not sure the exact website, but they have multi-tracks you can go download and practice on. I hope you saved an alternate version of the project if you're working on your own. Removed all the processing and plugins, prepped, edited, and just used volume. You brought all those faders down to negative infinity and then just brought everything in terms of volume. You used your most powerful tool, which is volume, to see how far you could push that mix. Just pan, just volume. Were any of you able to do it? Did your DAW eat your homework?
Ooh.
Yeah, it's dad joke central.
I liked it.
That was just for y'all. I hope you had fun with it. And even if you didn't have a chance to yet, I hope you'll try some of this stuff the next time you're doing a mix, because it, again, really helps you compartmentalize the process, keeps you focused. We've been teaching students for many, many, many years, and we've just found that this is the way that helps them the most get their heads straight about all this stuff. So passing it along to you, not holding anything back, just want you to improve. And even if you don't do it exactly like we teach, hopefully you'll get something out of it, and that's the point. Day one big picture concepts, the power of volume. Volume is your most powerful tool. Don't forget it. It's the thing that's going to decide frequencies the most. It's the thing that's going to decide your width the most, your depth the most. It's even going to decide, and we haven't really gotten to this yet, but we will probably at least tomorrow. It's even the thing that's going to solve your dynamics the most. We talked about the power of intention. The way that Jake worked yesterday allowed him to have a lot more intention. He's thinking about those three dimensions of space that he's painting in, and he's painting in it with just volume. But he was also taking notes, as we saw yesterday, of all the things that couldn't be fixed with just volume, which allows him to enter into today with a ton more intention. He's not just going to start throwing EQs and compressors on everything because he thinks he needs to. He knows the stuff that wasn't able to be fixed yesterday. He can start there. That's going to get him 90% of the way there, and the rest of it he'll hear along the way. But at least it definitely directs him and sets him off in the right path. A huge prompt and advice to start taking those notes, start working with volume, notice the things you can't change, and then when you get to that part, you'll have a lot more direction. And it speeds up your whole process. I mentioned yesterday at one point, I think when people come and they're at like the 80%, they want to get to 100% in terms of their skill level. It's really not techniques and tips and tricks that gets them there. People think that's what it's about. It's not about some plugin they don't understand. It's not about some tip or trick. It all boils down to efficiency and speed and precision. It's about learning the fundamentals at a core level so well that it becomes instinctual for you, and you speed up your entire process so that you can have more objectivity through the entire process and mastery over your tools. That's when you get that last 20% that you're looking for. There's no shortcut. There's no way around it. You just have to put the time in, but having the right mindset helps you get there quicker. And then we also went over the power of some mastering mindsets. Hopefully that was useful to you. We talked about the PAS analyzer, frequency analysis, and we're going to give you a little bit more of that today. Towards the end, we're going to pop back over, and I'm going to show you some more information about how mastering knowledge can help you, even in your mixing, even in your production. So it's something you should be thinking about from the very beginning. How's this going to end up in the master? And if you have that mindset, the mastering engineer might actually be able to send your track to the moon and make it sound wonderful. It's all connected together. Goals for today. We're going to dive into frequencies. We're going to dive into dynamics. We're going to dive into spatial processing. Today we're only working on the instrumental part. We're not going to work on the vocals. All day tomorrow is vocals. So he's not going to worry about the vocals today. He's just going to be worrying about the instrumental, getting everything balanced in terms of frequencies, balanced in terms of dynamic, getting that spatial processing perfect so it's all sounding great, sans the vocal, and then tomorrow we'll get the vocal really, really dialed in. And then again, we're going to talk a little bit more about the mastering mindset a little later today. I want to talk about a couple things with respect to each of these, just little high-level kind of bullet points to focus on today, just like the biggest picture stuff that I see students struggle with the most. That's what we're going to have you focus on today with some of this stuff. So let's talk about what those are. There's a few EQ mistakes that I see people make all the time. First one is just assuming everything needs EQ. I think you'll be surprised by the end of the day how many tracks of Jake's maybe don't have anything on them. That his mix session will be a lot lighter than maybe you've had on your own or have seen in other people. Only fix the problems that really exist. Only enhance the things that really need enhancing. Other than that, you're just wasting CPU power. So don't assume everything needs EQ. And then when dealing with masking, and I hope everyone can understand what masking is, it's a term that usually represents frequencies that start building up. So frequencies shared by different instruments. So a lot of times in the mid-range, for example, start overlapping with each other, called masking, and they start building up. And it creates mud, it creates a lack of clarity, a lack of depth in your mix. And the thing I want to focus on today, and Jake will demonstrate, is being more aggressive when dealing with masking. I think what happens too often is people think too locally when it comes to EQ and not globally enough. So what they do is they start to think, okay, I got to deal with the EQ on this synth or something. So they solo it and they start to carve out some space for it, and they're thinking, okay, this is starting to sound pretty good. What they're missing there, though, is the context. And what it leads to is they're trying to make it sound good soloed, but that doesn't matter. All that matters is if it sounds good in context to everything else. And what you miss out on if you do it that way is that you can usually carve out and clean up a lot more thinking globally than you can if you're listening locally. It'll almost freak you out sometimes, the amount of EQ you have to do to carve things out in their space correctly. If you solo it, it would sound bad, for example. It will sound weird. You're like, wow, this is starting to not sound like, a brass horn or whatever else you're working on. But what happens is there's a psychoacoustic effect when everything's being played together and all the frequencies are coming out at you. If all those frequencies are kind of being covered by similar timbres, even if you carved out a ton on a local level in context to everything else, it's going to sound totally fine. You won't notice the difference because those frequencies are being accounted for, and the ear just kind of fills in the gap for all of these instruments. So people have a hard time carving out enough of the mud. Things sound muddy. The reason is you're not being aggressive enough. And Jake's going to demonstrate today how hard sometimes you can cut things and need to cut things to create the space accurately. If you think about it this way, if you had 3 instruments that were all taking up the mid-range, what you kind of start to think about is, okay, what's the most important part of each of these sounds? What's the magic in each of these sounds? And if they're all kind of taking up the same space, you have to think about that, where the magic is, and then kind of get rid of everything else, because then when you put them together, the best parts of each of them are there, but they sound okay because the other parts are there too, filling in the space. And again, that psychoacoustic trick that happens to the ear makes them all sound as if they're full too. So Jake's not only going to be carving out space, but he's also going to be thinking about what's the most magic part of each of these. And that's the part to keep in. Carve out everything else. We'll see a bit about that today. Easier to demonstrate than explain. But the idea is be more aggressive, think globally with your EQ moves, and that's going to help you actually carve out enough mud to have that professional sounding track. The other thing we're going to see a lot of today is the difference between clipping and limiting and compression. Jake is a master clipper. He's taught me a lot about clipping. You'll see him use clippers more than he uses compressors, for examples. Well, why does he use clippers and limiters, and why does he use compressors, and what's the difference? And I think his mindset on this makes a ton of sense. Really, when it comes to controlling dynamics, if all you're really trying to do is tame transient dynamics, clippers and limiters are much better at this. They're faster. They do the job. It's usually one knob, one button, something like that, one dial to tame that transient. If you have some peaks that are spiking up, a clipper is very effective at doing that as long as you don't push it too far, or a limiter can do a very good job as well. And he can actually break down and explain, if you guys have questions on this, the difference between clippers and limiters. So if you're just taming dynamics, he's always reaching for a clipper or limiter. When it comes to compressors, most of the time it's for a more complex issue, which is pretty rare, but most of the time for him it's about expanding dynamics. It's about enhancement. Because you can actually do a lot of enhancement with compressors. You can make things sound more punchy. You can give them more depth if you know how to use them. So compressors have a lot more knobs. You can do any of this stuff with a compressor, but when you have, if you have to choose a tool and you have one that can get you the result in one knob, as opposed to the same result with 7 knobs, which one do you choose when it comes down to speed and efficiency? You choose the one knob. And then when you need something more interesting, or if you need to enhance, then you need those other tools. You need your attack and release times. You need all that kind of stuff to really dial it in. So he's going to give a master class today on clippers and limiters versus compressors, and that's always something really important to watch out for. Anything to add to that, Jake?
No, you articulated it really well. We're going to have examples of both of these today.
Great. Okay. And then the last thing, spatial processing. We want to demystify spatial processing. I've seen a lot of students over the years who struggle with getting the right amount of space in there. It's really easy with spatial processing to have things start to sound kind of amateurish when used the wrong way. It's really easy to overuse, but I think there's a more important mindset issue when it comes to spatial processing. And that is it's used to cover up problems. So we wait till the end to start adding spatial processing. Why do we do that? Because we want to solve all the problems and enhance and all the ways that need to be enhanced before we ever put kind of the frosting on the cake, as it were. Spatial processing has a way of kind of smoothing over those problems. And what happens is if you start to utilize it too early, then you cover up the problems that are there, but they add up in the end. They add up in the master. They add up when you have lots of little mistakes through the way. So it's better to save that for later. Don't use it to cover up problems. Make sure it sounds already fantastic before you add the spatial processing. That way, it's just an enhancement. It's just that frosting and that cherry on the cake. Okay? It's often used too aggressively. It's not consistent with the emotional scene, so it's not as simple as just throwing a reverb or a delay on there. We're very intimately related. I don't know if we realize or even think about it, but subconsciously we're very related to the spaces we're in. We know the sound of a forest compared to a cave, compared to our living room. And each song has an emotional scene to it. There's space and there's atmosphere and there's things going on. And there's kind of an emotion that you can find in different reverbs and delays that match better than other ones. So it's easy to be hasty sometimes and just throw one on there, but I think we have to be a lot more intentional about, is this reverb, is this delay enhancing the emotion of the track? Spatial processing is one of the most emotional tools. It sets the tone and atmosphere more than anything else. So we have to be very intentional about how we work with that in terms of the emotional scene. And what we're going to teach you today is the buckets rule when it comes to spatial processing. It really is a balancing act of diverse enough without being too diverse. What do we mean by diverse? It means by lots of different reverbs. You don't want to use the same, just one reverb on everything. That starts to sound very stale. Unless there's certain circumstances, like if it was just a guitar and a vocal or something and it's supposed to be just kind of captured live in one space. But for like a full production track, you don't want to just use one reverb on everything. It's going to start to sound stale. There won't be enough separation in the instruments from each other. Then again, you also don't want to use too many because it starts to at some point disconnect from each other and start to sound chaotic. And so there's this balance in between the two where it's just enough diversity so the instruments start to separate from each other and the vocal, but not so diverse that it starts to get chaotic. And what we're going to teach you is a really great way to do that, to find the sweet spot between diverse enough but not too diverse. Jake will talk to you about that today. It'll be a lot of fun. It's a great way to, once again, get a lot more intention, get a lot more focus, simplify things down, and hopefully you can find the sweet spot in that. Anything to add to that, Jake?
Nope, you nailed it, man. And what we're gonna see today is, we're gonna explore and have discussions about reverb being baked in during the production process too. That'll be a lot of fun.
Cool. Demo time. Enough of me talking. Let's get Jake in there.
Oh, hey, all right.
And we'll start this show.
All right, start the show. You guys ready? You guys ready to go? 2,476,388 in the chat. If you're ready to move. Anybody get it? Anybody paying attention?
A couple people, mostly people just smash their keyboards with their palm out of frustration.
I don't know why that gag tickles me so much.
Some people hate it.
I know.
There's always one or two people every time they're like, what's with the numbers?
Oh,
Don't do the numbers.
stop with the numbers.
Those people are also very fun at parties.
Sorry. Ah.
Yep, Ken's fun at parties, it looks like. The party in the corner. I didn't learn audio to do math.
Oh dear.
I also like the assumption that typing numbers is math. I didn't learn accounting to do math. Well, that sounds about right, too, if I know anything about accountants.
Cool. Hey, look what we got here. I mean, we got a nice little session. We got a nice little session. We're going to kind of focus on this stuff right here today. Are you guys seeing this, by the way? Let me know if you can see this. One's in chat if you can see this.
Yep.
Guys seeing it? All right. Sweet. Nice. We got drums, bass, piano, keys, and effects here. Well, we're gonna go through each one of these and kind of clear up some things. You know, first thing I want to do is just kind of observe. You know, play through the track, observe what's going on, and then we'll dig in.
On my way into the city,
You guys hearing that all right?
hoping the smoke will blow up my
need to turn it up.
dreams. Timers on, it's in the energy.
Louder.
Pressure escaping at the seams. All burned out from being in the clouds.
All right.
London Bridge is truly falling down. But we're too busy being busy, filling in the cracks. Right on track, in the trap, don't look back. Because the city's on fire. My mind's the leader of this riot. Burn it to the ground. Let it go up in clouds. London Bridge has truly fallen down. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. Let it burn. How did I end up on the line again? Oh, my friend, the familiar face of failure creeping in for all my sins. The lies are spreading like wildfire. My mind's the leader of this riot. Where do we go from here? So much hurting, cold, and so much fear. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. Let it burn. I hear the moaning of the longing, the wailing where the lost is calling. Let it burn. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries.
Yeah.
I gotta say, man, a couple notes. Lucy, I love this song. It was in my head all night. Very cool. We love to hire talented artists at mastering.com. Lucy, if you don't know, if you weren't here yesterday, she's the student success manager at mastering.com. A phenomenal artist, obviously. Her partner, Dakota, I think that's the producer name. He produced this, and he's our social media manager, so you just see that there's some talent baked in there. But very cool. Cool to have you in chat as well, Lucy. What a great song. I also like that someone changed their name to, what is it, 39 bass or something? 39 sub, which is the name of that sub that comes in. That's fantastic.
Love it. Yeah, man. Absolutely killer songs from her. Every time I hear a new Lucy War song, it's a bop.
Yep.
I'm just bopping.
Yep.
You know,
So good.
really solid. Cool. So yeah, I mean, some of the things that I'm noticing here, the first thing that kind of comes to mind is the drums, right? Like, I just feel like these drums need a lot more impact. And they really kind of like help drive the chorus, right? So in terms of kick and snare and things like that, I think we've got a little bit of a ways to go. These were the kind of notes that I was hearing. Kick lows, kicks, more impact on choruses, things like that. Other kind of like fixes that I was hearing here in terms of like EQ, low mids, pianos and bass, they need a little bit more kind of space to breathe in that area so that there isn't so much mud there. So going to be kind of cleaning that up a little bit. But I think first things first, first and foremost, this is like an anthemic kind of pop song, right? And a lot of that drive comes from the drums inside of the choruses. So I want to kind of focus on these things first, kind of fixing those and getting those kind of settled. So let's go ahead and dive in as long as that's cool with you guys. Ones, if that's cool. Yeah. Makes sense.
Let's do it. Let's polish it.
Let's do it. And just to kind of like maintain focus here, I'm going to go ahead and just solo those drums. We'll dive right in. I'm going to go to just like this heavy chorus section with all of these elements. A little bit more kick. That's just a rebalance. I didn't go in there with EQ and like pump up the low end or anything like that. My first thought is, I want a little bit more kick from this. What's the simplest way that I can accomplish this? Right? Maybe it's just a volume push. Maybe sometimes it's just a fader push. And I'm also thinking snare wise. Just want more of that chest kind of thump from the snare to create a little bit more groove here. We've got a lot of snare layers. Let's kind of dissect this a little bit.
Looks like 4 snare layers.
Yeah, this one's outside the group, so we're gonna pull that one in.
Everyone hearing this in stereo and high quality? Okay.
what else is going on here on top of the snares? These claps, right? Let's kind of bring this up here. I think the high end of that clap is kind of masking the punch of the in the body of the snare. Let's bring in those clap layers. I'm just turning the claps down a little bit. Make way for that snare punch to kind of come through. Listen in context. Nice. You know, I'm gonna make those a little bit tighter and just kind of like punchier. Some compression. Just slow attack compression here. Just on the kick. I'm just gonna kind of raise this up another decibel, see what it does. Nice, I like that. I'm gonna keep turning up the punch on the snare a little bit. No, I might enhance the punch on that snare a little bit more, just so it's a little bit pokier. I'm gonna use a transient shaper for that. So what this is doing is it's just turning up the transient of the sound, right? Without touching the sustain of the snare. So it's going to make that hit sound like come forward, jump forward, while the sustain sounds the same, right? So we're going to have to kind of mess with the gain on the backside of this a little bit. Hear that? Hear the difference there? It's very subtle, very nuanced, right? And then with. Just pokier, right? Pokier, punchier.
Subtle, not a huge thing, but pokier, just enough to cut through a little bit better.
Yeah, let's listen in context with everything.
Schwackier.
Do without and then with. It's a big difference in the mix. First without. Here comes with. It's just a tighter sound, right? It's basic. I could do the same thing by just turning down the sustain of the sound and allowing the transient to remain where it is. It's just a rebalancing, whether you turn up the transient and leave the sustain as is, or you turn the sustain down and leave the transient as is, you're still ending up with something like this, right? And pulling more focus and energy to the transient itself, which is going to result in kind of like that punchier kind of tone, right? Tighter, punchier. We also have a little bit of a gain increase here, which is okay. It's fine. You know, I'm not a stickler when it comes to level matching. You should level match, right? But I'm not trying to get like super precise here. We'll drag it down just a touch. Cool. Love it. Sounded good. I'm okay with like the punch on that, where everything's kind of sitting. Let's listen to it in context. Again, without. With. Getting that kick and the snare right up in your face the way that pop music often does, right? Really nice kind of push-pull kind of groove happening here now, you know, hitting a little bit harder. I have another kind of note here that says make dull in verse 2 kick. Let's take a look at that. bring it back. Let's see how that sits with the vocals, actually.
We're too busy being busy, filling in the cracks, right on track, in the trap, don't look back. Because the city's on fire, my mind's the leader of this riot.
We can take this a few different ways. I think I'm actually going to roll off the high end a little bit on this kick. It's a little clicky for this verse, and then once that kick comes back into the chorus, there's going to be contrast there. If I roll it off in the verse.
We're too busy being busy in the trap, don't look back. Because the city's on fire, my mind's the leader of this.
Just kind of softening that kick a little bit. Hear the difference here? I'll go ahead and kind of move in. All that click happening without the EQ. And then here, we're just rolling off the high end. You know, pushing it back a little bit more, making it a little bit easier to listen to, a little less abrasive in that part.
Tracks right on track, in the trap. We're too busy being busy, filling in the cracks, right on track, in the trap, don't look back. Because the city's on fire, my mind's the leader of this riot. Burn it to the ground. Let
Down just a couple decibels.
We're too busy being busy, filling in the cracks, right on track, in the trap, don't look back. Because the city's on fire, my mind's the leader of this riot. Burn it.
Cool. Yep, I like what that is. So I'm gonna zap that note. And then I'm gonna run over to the chorus again, and we're gonna do a little bit of bus processing here. I think I've fixed everything that I need to fix for the drums.
Now we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of the day. There's where to search and know.
Nice. You know, I'm just gonna play with just like a little bit of like flavor. You know, now I'm kind of, I've kind of fixed all of the the stuff there is to fix. Now I'm kind of moving into like enhancement mode where I'm playing with different paint brushes and basically seasoning the track, right? I'm playing with different seasonings to just kind of like bring out some nuance, bring out like maybe a little bit of my own personal taste. No right or wrong here, you know, just kind of playing with some things, see how things feel. I'm gonna do a little bit of like slow attack compression here on these drums to, I don't know, make them like pop a little bit more. I'm gonna start at 4:1 ratio. Just like very slow attack here. There's something cool about this particular compressor. It kind of adds like some saturation kind of more towards the high end of the frequency spectrum, which in this scenario is kind of bringing out a little bit of the subdivisions of the shakers and the hi-hats and things like that, which kind of gets that choo-choo train kind of effect, kind of gets you leaning into that a little bit. I do think it's a little bit intense right now, so I'm going to back off on the ratio. And I'm going to turn up the makeup gain just a touch. All those little details of those noises start to pop forward a little bit, and I think that's just the nature of the circuitry of this particular compressor, you know, adding that harmonic content. So I like what that's doing. I'm going to stick with that. I'm not going to overcomplicate it.
Can you check one thing for me, Jake? Just curious on that train noise. Is there any lower end stuff that's redundant down there that's in context of everything causing maybe some mud or something? Just curious.
Not too bad. I mean, you know, we've got maybe some moments of very super low end. Nothing that I was really kind of like picking up on, but just like as a safety net, we can cut all of that out.
I'd almost slightly shelf that 2, 3, 400 a little bit, because that's all just gonna get lost in context with everything, I think. Like when all the synths and everything are in.
Say again?
Like when all the synths and everything are in. But that's the only thing I'm hearing on this. It sounded great.
Right. Nice. Yeah, I'm actually gonna put a note here. Like train relationship to synths. And actually, we'll go like 200 to 500, and we'll just start listing because we know that there's a buildup in that. There's going to be some buildup in that area. There's going to be some competition in that area. They're just, you know, inevitably, I think in a lot of productions there is, because that's kind of natural, fundamental kind of area for a lot of things, especially orchestral, right?
Yep. Worth checking on a sample like that, because a lot of times there's just like crazy frequencies happening. It could be a bunch of
So I'm just going to keep like a running list here of 200 to 500 kind of instruments or like potential offenders, right? That we can check once we get to kind of like relational kind of balances and
choose what's most important where, just like I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. Lead vocal in the pre-chorus, and then we have, you know, those backing vocals. Obviously there's like a ton of buildup in that area, so just kind of like a note for that. Yeah, a lot going on there. I think that compressor does a good job of kind of bringing that out. I'm also going to just clip that. I'm just going to clip that drum bus a little bit. Save headroom, basically.
Yeah, everyone watch this. This is really important, and we're going to make a point about headroom and energy here in a sec.
Cool. So I've clipped about, I don't know, about 3 decibels there. 3 decibels of headroom.
Can anyone even hear the difference? No, right? So if anything, maybe he's adding the slightest amount of just like high-end kind of sparkle to it, just with the saturation that it's causing. But the point is he's saving 3 dB of headroom on those drums in terms of transients without it really sounding different. And that matters. Once you learn mastering, you realize that all of that headroom that you can save in all these steps along the way adds up to you being able to push it so much farther in terms of loudness and clarity.
Yeah, loudness especially, right? Loudness potential and like managing dynamics in the mix. Loudness potential starts in the mix, just hands down, right? So the better you manage transients, peaks, dynamic information using things like clippers, saturation, and limiting, the louder you're going to be able to push your master, and the easier it's going to be just to master your track, when you get to that stage.
And not necessarily just on the bus either. Like if the kick, you could find that you could go into the kick, for example, and probably save 2, 3, 4, 5 dB and not have it sound differently. This one happened to be pretty tamed already, but a lot of times in these, even in these FTMs, you'll see Jake go in and tame the kick and the snare a little bit just to save a little bit of room, and it won't sound any different. It just saves the room.
Yep, just knocking those transients down without there being an audible difference. That's the point, right? Like you can pull those transients down with like volume and limiting and things like that, but clipping, especially when it comes to just kind of like hard hitting drums and transients of that nature, percussion instruments, it's a really great way to maintain the punch, the perceived kind of impact of those instruments without squashing them, right? In a really obvious way. Saturation. So I'm just going to play these drums without bus processing and then with. First without. With. Right? Very tiny little differences in here. But they make a difference long run, right? Bumpier. Someone says bumpier. Everything sounds tighter. Yep, it's a little bit tighter. That tightness comes from, how we tightened up the kick and the snare, basically focusing on the transient energy rather than the sustain of the kick sound and the snare sound.
Yeah,
right?
we've made it sound more dynamic, but we've actually lessened the transient
Isn't that crazy?
spread, which is very, very cool.
It's crazy. That's what's fascinating. I love the clipping saturation game. Because we see peaking at what, -6 before bus processing, and it sounds quieter than when we're peaking at, what is it, like
7.5?
Just check it out. Yeah, check it out. 10 meter. Right, and then we turn on our bus processing. It sounds louder, it sounds brighter, it sounds like there's more impact, but it's actually, peaking wise anyway, it's quieter. Right? Wild.
It's cool.
Wild. Music is fun. It's killer. There's one more thing I want to try here to see what it might sound like just in a little bit of parallel processing. You know, I think there might be an opportunity to bring a little bit more detail out in some of this percussion. I'm going to do a fast attack, fast release, and just bring the mix knob all the way down. I'm going to get some pretty aggressive gain reduction going on here. You know, between 10, 20 gain reduction. And then I'm just going to kind of like mix this in a little bit. I'm going to use the high pass, the internal sidechain on this, the high pass filter, to ignore all of the low end content up to 250 hertz. So we don't activate the compression on those low end elements. It's just kind of like working on the mid rangier and higher end stuff. Not really liking what that's doing, so we're going to ignore it. I'm happy with what we had with the FG Gray, the V clip. You know, I'm done playing around. Good enough.
Yeah.
Before, right? Before. After. Time.
Yeah, it's not louder, it's quieter. It's perceived louder, though. And it's 6 plugins on your whole drum section.
Yeah, I wouldn't do anything more with this. If this was an artist that came to me, you know, for mixing, I wouldn't do anything more with the drums on this.
And to be fair, the sound sounded great already, but you'd be surprised even on stuff that's a live drum or this or that. It's not, you don't necessarily need more than that.
Right on. Cool. What do you think, guys? Shall we move on? Are you guys with me? Get some any golden nuggets there? Any aha moments for you guys? Yep, move on. Someone says move on, ready to go. Cool. Making sense. Yep.
People love the clipper.
People love the clipper.
They always do. I'd never used a clipper in the way that you teach it, Jake, before I met you, so it is a cool thing.
Yeah, it's killer. It's killer. So I come from like rock and metal world, right? And you know, we use clippers a ton in that genre. But dude, it spans across genre. Audio doesn't change. You know, the tools don't change. Manipulating audio doesn't change. Manipulating audio doesn't care about the genre. You know, it's all the principles are the same. The tools are the same. Use them to accomplish goals with intention.
And you can do it with a compressor, and I always did, but it's so much like it took you 7 seconds to dial that clipper in, probably. On a compressor, I have to dial in 8 knobs, you know?
Yeah.
And I wish Logic had a clipper. They don't. But there are free ones that are great.
They do. They do. You can use, I believe you can use the Bit Crusher
Oh, can you use that as a clipper?
as a clipper.
Oh,
I think so. Now I'm curious. We
Well,
are gonna move on in just a minute, guys.
I do love the Bit Crusher, but I usually use that to just kind of add some.
They have a clip distortion. They have a clip distortion, which you can probably use in the same, yeah, by pushing up the gain, right? You probably just high shell, you know, no filters.
Too many
anything
knobs.
like
Just download free clip.
Exactly, right? But it's like, you know, why would you do that? There's a bunch of free options out there. Free clip, yeah, exactly. There's a ton of them, ton of options.
Yeah, free clip is great. And that Ven one you're using isn't very expensive, if I remember right.
50, maybe 30 or 50 bucks, something like that, right? The reason I like this one is a great teaching tool. You know, you can actually see what you're clipping. You know, you can see the ceiling kind of coming down on the peaks.
And it tells you a readout of how much has been clipped too, which is really nice. Not all clippers do that.
Right down here. You know,
$28, someone said. Is that right?
it sounds right.
Yeah. Worth it.
Yep, totally worth it. Great tool. You know, soft, yeah, there you go, soft limiter. You know, there's a ton of options out there, guys. Like, don't get bogged down by all the options. I think, you know, the most important thing to come away with here is, you know, the tool itself and what it does and how you can use it with intention.
In our entire 2-year program, Jake, how many plugins do we recommend people buy?
How many? Oh, 2?
2.
Yeah. I think we actually have 2
It's not
recommendations.
It's not about the plugin. It's about, and both of them are metering tools, so they're just for metering, just so we can be all on the same page. Not even that you have to use those, but it's just so that we can all be on the same page in terms of learning.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I did undo that move. Somebody mentioned that. Thanks for looking out for me. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it's the Paz Analyzer and the Matt Meter MK2.
It's 2. All right. Anyway, let's dive back in. Let's move on. Take a listen. See what we got. I think we're pretty good here in terms of, you know, where the drums are sitting.
Yeah, you got this sounding great.
London's burning, and we all better off.
Dude, just wait for those vocals, guys. Wait for those vocals. Tomorrow, we're just gonna kill this thing. We've got a really nice guitar part that I'm just gonna bring up a little bit here. Nice. Great production. great production here. We are gonna check this against the PAS analyzer. See what we got going on. I need to make this smaller though. Can't have that taking up the whole screen. Sorry, guys. So this is creating some buildup here. I mean, we can see it in this area, right? And we got to remember that vocals are going to be in this area too. And this is kind of like our danger zone, you know, this 250 to 500. It's clearly coming from this guitar center, guitar center, guitar counter. So I'm just going to kind of bring that down a little bit. Can I take it out completely? Let's see. Okay,
See,
let's listen to it
great-
in solo.
Great teaching moment. Think about when you're listening to that in context, which part of the guitar is important there. It's not what you're hearing at 200. That's being done by a million different things. It's that attack of the higher end that actually comes through and is meaningful, right? That's the part we need to retain. Everything else is just causing mud, and you won't hear the difference.
Yeah, and if I'm playing a guitar like alone in my room, like I want that nice big beefy like chunky 200, 300, 400, 500, you know? Like and that's what you're used to hearing, and that's where you feel the guitar, right? That's where you feel it. You start to feel the vibrations and stuff like that. But in context with the mix, you know, what is its purpose? Are we losing anything by saving this sonic energy? You know, those are the kind of things that I'm thinking of, right? Let's listen to it in context. I'm going to turn the EQ on and off. No audible difference happening here, and we've saved so much space, and you know, we're not showing nearly as much buildup happening here on the analyzer.
Yeah, already we're...
Nice.
It's a pretty aggressive cut, too.
Yes, sir.
carving out space. The Paz is already starting to look better. Let's find the other culprits.
Yep. Probably those pianos, honestly. Okay, let's play with these a little bit. I think I could probably save some energy on this high drone chorus. No audible difference happening there in context, right? Hear that
Yeah.
like that low noise?
That's only going
That's
to that's only going to be mud in the mix with context to everything.
Exactly. I mean, even if we just add one more element, you can't hear it. So that's why I was kind of doing it with this synth arp at the same time, right? Your ear is going to be drawn to so many other things inside of this mix. There's no way that it's ever even going to be noticeable, right? So we're saving that energy. We're chopping all of that out.
Would you call that an aggressive cut? It's an aggressive cut.
Yeah, same as it ever was. Totally. Look at all that dancing around. Let's see how much we can save there. So it's noticeable with just that other instrument. I'm going to bring in the rest of the keys and see how much we can get away with. Yeah, not even really hearing that. Or, but I think that arpeggio is in a pretty good spot. You know, I might, instead of doing that, let's consider how the bass and the piano are going to be working together with this part also. So I actually like this area, but I want to pull down the areas on the other sides of it. Taking down a little bit of this area and allowing this to, you know, just balancing it out, basically. Cool. One more thing in the keys bus, and then we're gonna pay attention to the piano. Sorry. What am I missing here? I'm EQ on the wrong one.
Why isn't it doing anything?
You know, just taming this, you know, all these build-up points in here. Gross.
Thank you.
Have that atmosphere without there being build-up, you know, without it being like annoying to listen to, right? So let's do that. Cool. All right, let's clean up this piano a little bit. So I still want there to be a little bit of this kind of like low mid information in the piano because that's what gives it its body and its warmth, but I don't think it has to be as extreme, right? So I'm gonna use some multi-band compression to just tame the low mids on that piano. So I let that 200 range, that 300 range kind of come through a little bit, but if it crosses the threshold, you know, this is just going to turn it down, turn just that range of frequencies down. turn this band on and off. How much tamer that is. I'm actually going to turn up the output a little bit more. Level match. You know, tame that. My goal here is to tame that in a very kind of like transparent way. What about this vamp? You'll probably do something similar here. I'm just going to copy all that over. I'm not going to overcomplicate it. And just change the range because we're playing higher up on the keys a little bit. So we need to attenuate that buildup where it's appropriate. Just cleaner, clearer. You know, and let's separate these actually a little bit. Let's do like a slight pan. As if I was playing the piano, right? So like I've got my left hand playing the bass, the changes, and then the right hand just plunking away on the quarter notes. Now let's listen to it in context. Just make sure we didn't mess up a whole bunch of stuff. Let's listen with the vocals.
On my way into the city, hoping the smoke will blow up my dreams. Timers on, it's in the energy. Pressure escaping at the.
Bring it up a little bit more.
On my way into the city, hoping the smoke will blow up my dreams. Timers on, it's in the energy. Pressure escaping at the seams. All burned out from being.
And then this is where we've got some serious issues. It's this bass. But I'm happy where that piano is.
Escaping at the seams. All burned out from being in the cloud.
Fix that bass. Lots of masking going on between that bass and the piano. lot of competition right in here, right? Hear it clean it up? You can hear the piano start to come forward a little bit. There's more definition on the piano. Now they're mushed, right? They're mushed without the EQ, and then there's separation with the EQ. Right? But we're still allowing the bass to kind of come in here into this 100 area. Right? Another way you can actually do this.
Track
Play
spacer.
with- What's that?
You gonna do track spacer? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to do.
I read your mind. So did
Indeed.
Justin in
Tune.
chat.
So what we can do here is we can tell track spacer. This is a nifty little sidechain dynamic EQ. We can tell track spacer to listen to the keys track, which is, what's the keys track? Piano. It is aux 3. And then we can tell track spacer to just focus on anything above, let's say just like 175, right? So anytime the piano is present and playing and track spacer hears that, it's going to duck these frequencies automatically on the bass, the competing frequencies. And just for an extreme example, so you can hardly hear the bass at all there. Let's roll it off. Now without. Now with. Piano is still coming through. Bass is still supporting the low end. Listen in context. No vocals.
You know, I think, Jake, I think that grid on top, maybe you should do track spacer where it doesn't take all that grid away too, because that part I think is cool for that sound. There's that.
Oh, it's not attenuating that. That grit.
Yeah, it is.
It shouldn't be. Oh, you mean up here?
Yeah.
The mids. Yeah, that's a good call because that's like the texture of
It's
that.
the
whole bass.
character of it.
Yeah, exactly. In that mid range. So I think we can probably get away with like, 500-ish.
Yeah.
And then, since we're attenuating so much.
You can even boost it up.
Yeah.
Or even boost the highs up a little bit. I love that grit though. It's my favorite part of that sound is that grit.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's pretty sick. That right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a bit of a slippery slope, right? Because we've got a lot of buildup happening there, but it seems like probably around 600, 700, you know, anywhere between 500 and 800 is where that character is coming in.
Yep. Yeah, maybe narrow that even more.
Ah, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to split that bass into 2 separate tracks.
And yet another technique to do this, a similar thing. Watch and learn.
So now we have that. And then I'm actually going to open it up a little bit. I'm going to use some sample delay to open it up. So it's kind of like
Spreading it
around
out. Yeah, cool.
out of the center.
Love it.
And now we can use this for our lows, low, right? And we can ignore all this stuff
Yep, all together.
on our low track. And just let that kind of be what it is. Right, sitting in the low, and then let's bring in that grit. Cool.
I wish the tail lasted a little longer on that grit, huh?
We can do that.
To match the piano decay.
Got to drive the signal. Go a little bit more sustained.
Yeah, much better. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's the sauce right
Happy? Caleb happy?
there. I'll go back to sitting back now.
I like I like making Caleb happy.
Once in a while I have a thought.
Yep.
That's so much better now. Oh, I love that. Yeah, brilliant.
I'm still gonna attenuate this just a touch.
pressure escaping at the seams. All burned out from being in the clouds. London Bridge is truly falling down. But we're too busy being busy, filling in the cracks. Right on track, in the trap, don't look back. Because the city's on fire. My mind's the leader of this riot. Burn it to the ground. Let it go up in clouds. London Bridge has truly fallen down. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. Let it burn.
I'm excited to get into those vocals.
How did I end up on the line again? Oh, my friend, the familiar face of failure creeping in for all my sins. The lies are spreading like wildfire. My mind's the leader of this riot. Where do we go from here?
Especially in these parts.
So much hurting, cold, and so much fear. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. Let it burn. I hear them moaning of alone, the wailing where the lost is calling. Let it burn. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning.
So just so you know, guys, I agree with what somebody said, like that snare seems a bit too high. That's gonna balance out when we hit the vocals tomorrow. Right? So as soon as we kind of like clean up those vocals and get them sitting where we want them to sit after vocal processing, it's going to rebalance the perception of where the snare is actually sitting in the mix.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like global perception. I talked about that earlier, but there's also sometimes just like a global imagination. You know what you're going to do later, and you know that it's going to like balance out. So you're just kind of imagining a future in which you have done that. So
Exactly. And that's what I'm hearing as I'm listening to this and like I'm bopping along. I'm hearing the end. Like the end is in mind here. I know what I'm going to do with the vocals. I know where I want those vocals to sit. I know how I'm going to treat them. I'm going to treat them like, you know, a straightforward, like either all pop or top 40 pop vocal, right? Where it's nice and polished and super consistent and upfront and in your face, and also kind of like, you know, super clear and leaning into the message of the song, right? There's going to be a ton of emotion here and like a nice shiny spotlight shining right on this vocal. So it's all going to kind of like balance out once we get to that. What do you think, man? Do you want to take a break and then hop back in, talk about a few things? What are your thoughts?
you gonna do any spatial stuff today?
You know, I don't feel like this track needs any spatial processing, honestly. I can show, you know, I can demonstrate some things if you'd like to demonstrate and just kind of like chit chat about some spatial stuff. But there's so much reverb kind of baked into these tracks. My fear is that by adding more, we're going to take away the clarity and the definition. In this scenario, I might just lean into what the producer had in mind, take all of their reverb choices and just kind of roll with them.
Yeah,
what
I
are your
agree.
thoughts?
I agree. We could at least show them how to set it up and have it set up for tomorrow when we do the vocal, because I'm sure we'll do some on there. There might be a couple things we could do subtle on the drums just to give the drums a tad of space. But let's take 5 and come back and think about it.
Cool. Yep. Love it. Sound good, guys? Take 5. 5 minutes. Bio break. Fill up some water. Get hydrated. Stand up. Do a couple jumping jacks. Meet back here in 5. I'm gonna bring up a timer. My favorite timer, as a matter of fact. This is my number one. All reliable. The Goog. 5 minutes on the clock. See you in a few, guys. Hey yo. What's up, guys? What's happening? Everybody good? Everybody refreshed? Yeah. Everybody having fun? 25 in the chat if you're having fun. We like to have fun. Love talking about the craft. Love just building dope tracks. Love chatting with you guys. Has anybody seen anything that they're going to add to their workflow? Everything. All of it. Clipper, limiter. Yeah. Exactly. Like aha moments. Any kind of aha moments that you'd like to share? Less plugins. Cool. Yeah, that doubling the bass, kind of like duplicating the bass. Splitting. We call it splitting the bass. More prep. Adding a Jake to your process. Hey, you can hire me anytime. Cool. Is yes an answer? Banishing mud. Yeah, totally. Get the kick and snare right up in your face. Now, for this track, I did feel like the kick and snare needed to be kind of like right up in my face, but that's very genre specific, even song specific. Some songs don't call for that kind of approach, right? This one did. Nick asked what kind of compressors were the ones used to increase the transients. Yeah, the type of compressors, as long as I'll tell you, as long as you understand that the type really is less important than the actual act of compressing and knowing why you're doing it, right? So that the type of compressor that I used on this was just a VCA, standard VCA compressor. Transparent. Well, just one that I like on percussive elements for no other reason than I've experimented with a whole bunch of other ones, right? You have to put in the time in experimenting and learning all of your tools and kind of what they sound like on different instruments and things like that. That's where I get, my preferences from personally. I don't really go theoretical, to be honest. Like this compressor always sounds good on this compressor always sounds good on that, in theory, right? I always run my own tests and use the gear and make decisions based on my own preferences and experiences anecdotally, right? I think those are great starting points. When you go online and you see 1176 always sounds good on the vocals. Well, it's not always, right? It's but I do think there's some, a little bit of leeway there. You can use that kind of stuff as a starting point, but ultimately run your own tests, experiment, a whole bunch of different stuff, and make your own decisions. Think for yourself, all that good stuff. A lot of weird advice out there, dude. But anyway. What I used for this, it was simple VCA compressor. I like the Slate Digital stuff, and then I used a transient shaper just to increase the transient levels a little bit. Tape saturation instead of clipper, yeah, it would just be a gentler and different effect. That would be fine. You can use tape saturation. It's just, it reacts a little bit differently. Right? It is going to create some saturation, and it is going to shave off the peaks of a transient a little bit. But a clipper is just, I mean, depending on how hard you have it set, is just going to chop them right off, pretty, much more aggressively. I like to use tape saturation more for like vibe, and character, and just kind of like experimenting. Nope, I don't use any analog gear. I'm completely in the box. You want to understand transients better? Yeah, I think that's Googleable. You can Google that. Just Google transient energy. To use references. Yep, use references. We'll get there. I'm just going by gut right now, and then we'll use reference. Actually, now we're gonna.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the exact next thing that we do.
Pretty soon, yeah.
It's just kind of like see where we're sitting compared to our reference tracks, and then make adjustments based on that. Yes, I've mixed and mastered and recorded a cappella music. Yep. I work with artists who come in with a single wave file, instrumental, like a beat that they want to like rap over or sing over. Yeah. Any advice on how to work with that as far as making the mix better when I can't edit each instrument? You're just going to have to rely on more kind of like frequency oriented tools, right? So like things where you can break up frequencies if you need to manage those things, probably a little bit more side chaining tools to get the vocals to kind of sit well in the pocket. What would you do different for rock and metal? All of the principles are exactly the same for rock and metal. It doesn't matter. The genre, the techniques are, there are little tips and tricks and things like that that, might apply to different genres. Like a kick drum in metal is probably just going to be clickier, but how you get that clicky kick drum doesn't change from genre to genre. You select it, you get it right at the source, or you record it correctly at the source, and then you work with it in the mix. Right? If you want more click, you use an EQ to make it happen. If you want, just like we did here with this genre. It's all the same. I don't really go looking for phase issues unless I hear them. Can you use a compressor to get rid of any unwanted frequencies? You can use a multiband compressor to attenuate a range of frequencies, but not like I wouldn't use like a regular compressor for something like that.
Yeah, you can adjust the tone slightly, but it's not really a drastic EQ machine.
Yeah.
See you, Joel. Yeah, sometimes you just have to listen through a playlist of similar music till you find something that is generally the same. I think people get hung up on it needing to sound too much the same. It just needs to be in the same ballpark. Could this exist on a playlist with that song? Because you're only looking from a pretty 30,000 foot view most of the time. General frequency range. Am I in the ballpark? Are my drums in the ballpark of loudness? Are my vocals in the ballpark of loudness?
Channel strip style plugins, yeah, I think they're fine. I don't use them personally. I like the simpler the better. I'm a simple guy, I want like minimal, simple plugins. And if I use a channel strip, you know, chances are I'm probably not going to use everything on the channel strip. Right? So then that's like wasted, like unused stuff. This is part of my OCD a little bit, probably. But there are great ones out there, you know. There's great software out there. Just know your tools. I don't use templates. Nope. For the same reason, really. I can quickly just get done whatever I need to get done, and it's you know, unless I'm doing an album with like all the same exact instrumentation, I'll save some of my like balances and my presets and channel strips and things like that and apply them to other mixes just for like consistency's sake and for like speed of workflow and efficiency and things like that. But I'm always doing the work ahead of time on like that one track or something. So there's some things that I'll carry over and like copy paste kind of thing, but I don't use templates really. Anyway, I would love to just like Q&A everything here, guys, but we have a lot to cover. So I think we got to move on.
Can you post a link to the school group, Jake, real quick? There's a few people I haven't been able to get in there yet. If you want replays for yesterday and the replays for today and the community aspect of continuing to ask questions, just join the free school group. It's just there for you.
I spammed it.
See you, Ricky.
Well, that's the point, William. Like William asked, will you ever do a fix the mix with not that much expensive sounding production? You know, like local studio recordings with half of the tracks and more stuff that should and could be fixed.
I mean, we've worked on less good stuff.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've worked on less good stuff. Less polished.
Yeah, less polished stuff for sure. Yeah, that's a whole like different rabbit hole basically. You know, if you're trying to fix like poor production, it's a different conversation. That becomes more about production and songwriting and recording technique and sound selection, things like that. What do we say? Get it right at the source.
And if you're not working with artists that do, who are underpaying you to mix, just think about your life. That's not the life. There's a different mindset where you can get the skill to work with people who are good producers, who will pay you for your time well and love what you do, instead of the constant circular battle it seems you have with people who don't give you good stuff, who are the least appreciative of what you do and pay you the least.
Yeah. Yep.
That'll burn you out really quick.
Yeah. Let's keep going. Let's jump back in here, guys. Are you seeing my screen still? See my screen? Ones in chat? Cool. Sweet. Awesome possum. Do a quick listen.
And the smoke will blow up my dreams. Timers on, it's in the energy. Pressure escaping at the seams. All burned out from being in the clouds. London Bridge is true. truly falling down. But we're too busy being busy, filling in the cracks, right on track, in the trap, don't look back. Because the city's on fire, fire. My mind's the leader of this riot, burning it to the ground. Let it go up in clouds. London Bridge has truly fallen down. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt. Walls are way too thin. The walls are way too thin. Get down, now you're down. Where'd you get? And we all better be now. Get out. Getting trapped in the dirt. Ooh, you left me waiting on a heartbreak. Cracks, let it run. Honey, so you should run for your life. We all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dark. Antichrist. Christ, let it get down, now you're down. Where'd you get? You had get out. Ooh, the walls are way too get down, now you're down. And we all better run. Ignored and get out. Getting ooh.
What are we hearing, guys? What are we hearing? More highs, more sub, warmth, more sparkle. Mids needs more sub, less mud. Crunch reference sounds brighter. That's right. Where does it sound brighter?
Mostly the
Vocals.
vocals, which we haven't done yet. But you sure left a lot of room for them to be bright and not interfere with anything else, Jake. I wonder if that was
Sure.
intentional.
Certainly did, Caleb. Nick liked that one. Yeah, high end, right? It's the high end. That's kind of like the most noticeable thing that I'm picking up here, right? Across all three of the different references. I think, everything else is pretty much in the ballpark. We're going to make some tweaks and things like that, but I think we're in a good spot with this in terms of the instrumentation. Now, we wanted to explore kind of spatial processing a little bit, even though this might not be the best track to demonstrate it on, since all of the reverb has kind of been baked into the tracks and it's all very intentionally kind of laid out for us here. Still want to share kind of like the process that we like to go through and that we like to teach here when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, that being said, let's dive in. What do you think, guys? Ready? Spatial processing, ones in chat. Circ.
We'll definitely use it tomorrow too. So even if we don't do a ton on the instrumentals, we'll definitely be using it on the vocal tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of like, this is the setup that we found kind of is a nice middle ground between not enough variety and just enough variety, right? It is basically kind of mentally think about your mixes in terms of three different things. One, drums and percussion. Two, vocals. And three, everything else. So first, everybody, I just want you to categorize your mixes and just think in your head about these three things: drums and percussion, vocals, everything else. All right. So we've got these types of instruments inside of our mix. All mixes are going to have this. Some are going to have just, like acoustic guitar, vocals, things like that. We're not talking about those things. We're talking about full-fledged mixes. Those are kind of like a little bit of an exception there. We can talk about that in the school community if you have questions. But for now, drums and percussion, vocals, everything else. Each one of these three categories, we set up a short reverb and a long reverb. So drums and percussion get a short reverb and a long reverb. Vocals get a short reverb and a long reverb. Stick with me. Everything else gets a short reverb and a long reverb. Okay. And we bus our reverbs. So this is what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and set these up so you can kind of use this as a, you know, as a template or as a starting point for your workflow if you want to adopt this method. So I'm going to set up 2 aux tracks. One, it's bus 15. Just use some open buses. I'm going to label this one drums short, and this one drums long. Drums short, I'm going to pick a reverb.
Start somewhere.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you pick, right? You just start somewhere. You start with a reverb with a shorter decay. When I say shorter decay, I mean like maybe half a second. That's not a science, you know, but start at half a second and go from there. You can always change it later. For me, well, I'm going to use just a large chamber, drums, about, 500 milliseconds. Great. I'm not going to overthink it. You can use any reverb plugin you want. And long. Use another reverb plugin here and just do a large haul. 2.5 seconds. Fine. Done. So those are the reverbs for my drums. Anything that is drum or percussion related that I feel needs reverb will be used through sending the signal to one or both of these auxes. All right. So for example, let's just go into the snare. Kind of like common instrument to kind of stick some reverb on. Let's turn off the reference. Yeah, and for this track, I actually prefer like nice dry snare, kind of like punchy in your face for this, since there's so much reverb going on everywhere else. It kind of helps the snare kind of cut through. But if we wanted to put some reverb on it, I would use a send it to maybe, a short reverb and just kind of blend it in. You can't even hear the reverb on it right now because there's so much reverb elsewhere in the track. Doesn't really work for this track in my opinion. I wouldn't really put a reverb on on this snare, but a short and then a long. We have a long if we wanted that snare to just kind of decay a little bit more. But again, not the right move for this track. But that's the setup, right? And you would only use those reverbs for the drums, for percussion. But we've got a couple other buckets to set up here, right? We got vocals and then everything else. All right. So let's set those up. A couple more auxes. I'm going to start with the instruments. When I say everything else, I mean the instruments. So I'm going to use an open bus here. 15, 16, we're going to use 17. And then we're going to use 18 for this one. We're going to call this instrument short, instrument long. Same idea. Pick your favorite reverb, somewhere, below a second. I'm just going to use some medium room. Fine. About 539 milliseconds. Why not? And we start there. Long. Use your favorite reverb. Something generally longer than a second, maybe 2 seconds. We'll just go pick a plate. Almost 2 seconds long. Boom. Done. And then for everything else, bass, piano, keys, and sound effects, I would use just these reverbs, right? And the key is that these are different reverbs than your drums, right? There's variety there. There's contrast there. Reverb time calculations? No, I don't use formulaic like reverb time decay calculations or anything like that. I just go on my ear. I don't really time decay time. Well, you can if you want. Right? But there are a couple arguments for that. One is that if you have the decay time perfect, it's always going to be on the grid, and that's great. The other argument is if your decay time is less than perfect on the grid, it's going to stand out a little bit more, right? It's going to be a little bit more imperfect, and humans can actually be more drawn to that, imperfections. It's just all in what kind of, producer you want to be, how you want to approach it. Totally up to you. I like to just kind of rely on the ears. I do the same thing with like compression, attack, and release times too. I don't pay attention to the numbers. I pay attention to the feel. Like, what does it do to the overall feel and the emotion of the track, right? It comes from a more like a deeper kind of place. All right. I'm not saying like numbers are bad. And I think, there's just a balance to be had there. But if I were like to be placed somewhere on a scale when it comes to my mixing, or just kind of music production in general, I would say I'm 80% just like ear and feel, and then 20% like, okay, like double checking with numbers and meters and things like that. That makes sense. Anyway. So are you guys following me so far with this setup? One's in the chat if you're following me with the setup. Yeah. So I've got drums short and long. I've got instruments short and long. And then, we've got a third bucket here, right? Vocals. Box short. Box long. Same exact thing. Just a slightly different reverb.
Only difference is you might throw like a delay aux in there too on the vocals. So you might have 3.
I'll show you what I like to do, guys. Let's set up these verbs first, then we'll jump into delay here. So a reverb, just pick a reverb that I like for vocals.
And again, as a reminder, this is all about creating separation, a little bit of variety. The ear likes that. The human ear likes that without it being too many. Like if you had a different reverb on every single track, it starts to sound a bit chaotic and it lacks glue, so it lacks cohesion. This is kind of the sweet spot we've found for just enough, not too much.
It's funny. I got these settings from Austin. Austin at Make Pop.
Mm-hmm.
Make Pop Music. Daniel's business partner there.
Mm-hmm.
And these have been my go-to kind of like presets on these on just vocals for I can't even tell you years. This is always my starting point on these vocals. He's like, try this, so I tried them and I like them. Can't remember where they are though. plate.
And again, this is only a starting place. So if you started to listen and if something seems out of place, if the emotion seems wrong with these, then you change it. But you got to start somewhere. So you throw a couple down, start listening.
Hotkey? Hotkey for what? For the aux? Control N. I don't think I changed that one.
I prefer football.
Murray, I do not put reverb on every instrument. It's very project dependent. It's all project dependent.
A separate bus. I'll usually create a delay bus too. Jake often does as well.
Oh, sorry. Melanie, yes, sometimes I will blend long and short delays. You're going to see that in the vocal demonstration tomorrow. Steve, it's pretty, I can't say always, but most of the time, heavy rhythms like that wall of sound you're talking about, hard pan left and right, distorted guitars, I leave dry. But again, not always.
Yeah, Bobby, we panned some of the instruments. Some of them already had panning baked in. No, we don't use a stereo enhancer. You can create all the width you need in a mix. You don't need anything else.
Oh, which reminds me, I think I've got a couple notes here about that we need to kind of dig into. We're going to move on here, guys. Yeah, so for reverbs, this is the setup 3-bucket. I call it the 3 buckets method. I'm also going to add a couple extra buses here, or aux tracks here for vocal effects. I'm going to have a vocal like short delay and then a vocal long delay. And this is just in preparation for tomorrow's session. Just getting this all set up. You just use your favorite delay plugin. And I'll start with just like an 8th note delay on one of them. Oops. And then a vocal long delay. Again, same deal. Empty bus. Use, like a half note delay. Delay, yes, Paul. Delay is important to tie BPM. That's what I like to do anyway. And then you can always make micro adjustments from there. That's like my starting point. I tie the delay, the delay feedback to the grid, to the tempo of the track. You don't have to do that, Again, project dependent. I feel like most of the time, it works pretty well because you want that kind of like bouncing along with the rhythm. But, depends on the project, depends on the goals. I'm going to take all those wet effects and I'm just going to put them into a single stack. We got drums short, we got drums long, we got instruments short, we got instruments long, we got vocal short, vocal long, short delay, long delay. Plus them together. Those wet effects. Cool. And just toss them all the way down to the bottom. Now we've got our spatial processing all set up. Any more questions about that, guys? I can answer probably a couple more before we move on. Would you EQ sidechain your reverbs too? Sometimes. We might do that tomorrow with the vocal.
Yeah, I'm almost always EQ a reverb, but I like to stay away from absolutes. Most of the time, try to clean up some of those mids, maybe some of the high highs or something. Just find the most sweet part of the reverb.
How does putting the effects in a summing stack help? It helps my brain in terms of organization.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, same idea. You know, duck delays with compression or side chaining or whatever. You know, it depends. Depends on the track. Depends on what I'm trying to achieve. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Yep, stereo delay. You can use any delay plugin you want to set those up.
This is the problem with a lot of YouTube videos out there. A lot of times they state stuff like, use this trick, and we
Always.
think that it like means we always need to do it. And a lot of times there's a lack of context. Much more important to learn the fundamentals of all the tools and realize how much you're the artist here painting in these dimensions of space.
Ping pong for stereo, are you into that? Absolutely. Just personally, I love start. That's actually where all my starting points are. And this is just a personal taste thing. But if you notice here, there's a ping pong button. I actually engage this for my short and long delays. And if it doesn't work for the track, I'll disengage it. But I always kind of like start there. I am into that. That was the answer to the question. Jake, do you pan the short and long reverb right and left? No, I just keep them, the stereo reverbs. Nice text meme, Christian. Wait. Let's guys, let's move on from this. I've got a couple things I want to show you before we shut down for today. We had this piano main competing with verse for bass. I just want to address some of these notes and show you like a little bit of spatial processing things here. Interesting kind of effects. Now, we already kind of saw some spatial processing with this split bass trick before, right? I used the sample delay to kind of like widen this up. Right, listen, before coming out of the center, after there's some width there, right? Kind of coming out of the sides. Let's take a look at this mid-range arpeggio. Could use the same kind of technique to kind of create width here. Right.
London Bridge is
This part is contributing to all of the kind of like that mid-range buildup that's cluttering up the center of the mix here, right? So maybe instead of having it kind of like jammed up the center, we can kick this out to the sides. First, let's just clean up the mid-range. Now we've got this. Now we've got, if we want to take a mono track and turn it into a stereo track, same idea. Delay on the left side, there's going to be no delay. And then I'm just going to, a little bit of delay on the right side. Anywhere between, 10 and 40 milliseconds-ish. Hear the difference? First before. After. Right? leaning a little bit to the left, but there's a delay on the right that kind of splits it out and clears up the center, right? More time. Right? That's right. That's called the Haas effect.
And if you're listening in mono, you won't be able to hear this. So that's
Exactly.
a good check.
Exactly. So listen to what happens with our vocals here, right? Check this out.
London Bridge is truly falling down.
Right? We've got these two elements competing for space in the center. Now we're going to toss on our sample delay on the piano. Listen to what happens.
London Bridge is truly falling down.
Right? One more time.
London Bridge is truly falling.
Clutter in the center. And now,
London Bridge is truly falling down.
And it's cool
that-
because it's such a cool texture. It's such a cool part, but it gets completely lost in the mix. Like you can't even really hear it without splitting it out.
exactly. So we're going to keep it like that. We're going to drive it out of the center of the mix, declutter it, kind of leave room for the vocal. The vocal kind of steps forward a little bit because now we've created that separation with the left to right spectrum.
Creating space for everything isn't just EQ. It's also painting in your stereo field.
That's right.
Finding space for everything.
That's right. We've got this shimmer part here too, right? Maybe I'll just do like the opposite, where the shimmer kind of leans a little bit to the right. First before.
London Bridge is truly falling.
Now after.
London Bridge is truly falling down.
Makes sense? Now, let's do both of these. Check this out. Now we've gone from 3 elements, all competing for space in the center of the mix, to just one element in the center, and these other 2 kicked out to the sides. Right? Nice separation happening here. First before.
London,
Solo 'em.
London Bridge is truly falling down.
Now after.
London Bridge is truly falling down.
With me? With me? Stealing this. Good. Dude,
Steal all of it.
go. Go and create like phenomenal music. Go create dope music. You know, that's what it's all about. Just getting more good sounding music out into the world. Cool. Approve. Give it an approve. Sweet. Yeah, those 2 instruments were completely mono. You know, and we've kicked them out. We've made them stereo tracks by using the Haas delay kind of effect. Very, very simple. You know, any kind of stereo delay can do this. Just 0, you know, feedback or 0 timing on one side, and then anywhere from 10 to 40 milliseconds on the other side.
Let's hear it with everything in, because I couldn't even really hear those sounds before. I mean, I could, but they were very soft. They're definitely getting lost.
London Bridge is truly falling down.
Now with.
London Bridge is truly falling down.
Surrounding us, hugging us, a little bit more of an immersive feel now and decluttering the center and leaving space for that vocal to pop.
And especially on the second time this happens, there's more stuff in the mix. It was a little easier to hear it on this one, but especially on the next one, you want that space because this happens again here.
London Bridge has truly fallen down.
You know, it's interesting. Now, I have carve out space on this piano hits. This is already kind of like swirling around, but we've got some like honkiness happening here. Yeah. Let's just kind of clear that out. Fix that note. Be pretty aggressive there.
London Bridge has truly fallen down. London's burning. London Bridge has truly fallen down.
You know what? I'm gonna actually roll off a little bit more. Pretty aggressive.
London Bridge has truly fallen down. London's burning. London Bridge has truly fallen down. London.
Nice. I think that's just enough. Not a lead character, really kind of more of a supporting role there, right? Just doubling the vocal. Doesn't need to be up front, can be in the back. And I think, ooh, we have
One
guitar
more.
counter, which I'm gonna say guitar center, because I called it that before on accident, and now I think it's funny. So let's go over and do it. We cannot hear this at all with the with the vocals here, right?
Yep.
And we all cries. London's burning. And we all better run, for we can't get out. There's research.
I mean, it's in there, but there are so many elements jammed up the center of the mix that we could use this kind of like kicked out to the side and maybe kind of like swirling around the listener a little bit. So there are a few ways we can do this, right? A few ways we can do it. First of all, we can just turn it up a little bit.
Cries. London's burning. And we all better run, get out, getting packed in the dirt of this research. London's burning.
You know, still kind of getting buried. What else could we do? Like that sample delay is a great way to kind of take a mono,
Could even just
kind of
pan
like
it.
a mono source and kind of widen it up. Thinking like a chorus. Hear how this kind of kicks it out to the sides?
And we all better run, for we can't get out, getting packed in the dirt of this research. And no one can hear our cries. London's burning. Cries. London's burning. And we all better run, for we can't get out, getting packed in the dirt of this research. And no one can hear our cries.
So with an element like this, I'm not, you know, we're faced with a couple decisions here, right? Because this is still obviously very buried in the mix, right? There's a ton of instrumentation going on here. Do we want this to just kind of like be a part of the atmosphere that's happening, or do we want to approach this as more like a lead instrument? Like, how much attention do we want to draw to this? Some people will be like, hey, we want it to be a lead. Look at all those folks. All those folks are like lead. And then
Could
we
even
have
just try
more
panning
people
it
that are like, atmosphere.
to give it more bite. You could just pan it one side or the other.
Yep.
Find a spot for it where there's not a lot going on in that part.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. And there's no right answer here, guys. I mean, Michael would say there's a right answer, but there's really no right answer. It's all engineer's choice, right? Or your client too. Client might say, hey, or the artist might say, hey, you want to hear that guitar a little bit?
Here are Christ, London's fire.
What else is going on? If we want that to poke out, we need to identify what's masking it, right? That's the first step. What's masking it? Vocals, maybe?
It's kind of the vocals, yeah.
Because everything else is in right now, and we can still clearly hear it. So do we want to sacrifice the vocals?
Nope.
Do we want to carve out space in the vocals so this lead guitar element can pop through? I certainly don't. I don't want to do it. Can't you just add gain? Exactly. So this is kind of like where my head's at with this now. Is all right, we got this cool kind of line going on here. Can we make this maybe, can we take the dynamic range and the frequencies and manipulate those things so that this can sit on the outside of the vocal or maybe get placed in the mix a little bit differently? It's kind of what I'm thinking. Where is a vocal going to be sitting? It's going to be sitting in here, right? Like all the clarity and kind of like high end. It's going to be like from here, like all kind of like in this area, right? Get all of it in.
Now we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting packed in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear us.
Squash it. I'm just gonna take a just standard limiter. Gonna cut out some of this noise.
Now we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting packed in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear us. Christ, London's fire. Now we can't get
Got it.
Poking through now.
Humor me. Try like 25% right. There might be a spot there.
And we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the darkness, we search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the darkness, we search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out.
I mean, I'm okay with it wherever. That's not the kind of thing I spend like a whole ton of time on. I think, you know, I think it can fit anywhere now. Now that we've got the dynamics in place and the frequencies in place.
Just thinking about clearing a lot of space for that center, but I like it.
Yeah.
The heavy
yeah,
lift,
and
the heavy
we could
lifting is the
somebody
limiter and the
actually,
EQing.
You know, yeah, maybe a tremolo would be cool there, right? Kind of like swirl it around. Somebody mentioned that somewhere.
Let's try it for kicks.
Yeah, why not? And then we'll move on. Just gonna use the Logic one. Oh God. Look at that.
And we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the darkness, we search, and no one can hear our cries. London.
That's okay. It's okay. That's not the kind of thing I'd rabbit hole on though.
The other
You know.
option, the other option, is to mute it.
It's just muted altogether.
And we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the darkness, we search, and no one can hear our cries.
And then after revision process, where's that guitar we laid down? Didn't we lay down a guitar in the third chorus? I could have sworn we laid down a guitar in the third chorus.
I don't think so. I don't think you did.
No, I didn't see
Anyway.
one.
All right, we should wrap it up. Let me teach you guys one more mastering thing to think about. Jake's going to demo this too. And then we'll let you guys run for the day. Lots that we covered. Of course, we talked yesterday about end-in-mind perspective. So the more you can do in the production and mix right, the better the mastering engineer is able to make the track. So if you have that end-in-mind perspective of what a mastering engineer would like to hear, what makes mastering hard, what makes it easy, it gives you a leg up in preparing everything properly. One of the other things that you can do, we talked yesterday about more of the frequency balance with the PAS analyzer, but also dynamics can make mastering hard. So if you send a master or a mix over to a mastering engineer and it has a bunch of crazy transient peaks, and by the way, some of you were asking what transient peaks were. Well, now you know. So we got a whole bunch of arrows on this thing showing you where they are, transient peaks. But if you send that over to a mastering engineer, those are, you can tame those, but you have to do quite a bit of processing to do that. Why not save yourself the destructive nature of those tools and just get it right at the source? So how then do we assess transients in a mix? It's easy to see in a waveform, so if you bounced it down to a stereo file, you can literally see the transient peaks, and if it looks like there's big crazy spikes, that's what a mastering engineer would see. But is there a way to assess it just right there in the mix? We have a tool for you to use that can break that down. Jake, do you want to show them that tool?
Yeah, totally.
Hello? Okay.
Sweet. Yep. This is called Wave Observer. Stick it on the stereo out, and it'll show you what your waveform looks like. The whole mix. Let's just say, listen. I mean, if I go again to this chorus here.
And we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search.
And we can see we've got some kind of like peaks, some transients kind of like popping up here, right? That you can do that too, Alex. You can just bounce this and import to session. Totally do that.
Totally.
That's fine too.
This will save you having to bounce it and pull it into a different session is all. But
Yeah.
you can totally do it that way.
Yep.
But there were some pretty big transients there. Where do you think it's coming from, Jake?
And we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning, and we all better run.
Eh,
I think it's a free plugin. Is it free or cheap, Jake, this one?
I think it's free. Yeah, totally free. Yeah. Trevor, I'll take drums for 200.
So there might be some more dynamic processing we can do on those drums.
Right.
The kick snare, possibly the shaker.
Yep.
Let's see what that looks like in real time.
I'm gonna go ahead. Add some clipping.
Clip, baby.
You know,
Clip it
what are
up.
the loudest parts of this drum track? Guys, what are they? Kick and snare. Can we save some headroom with the kick and the snare? Let's see. Shaving a haircut.
It's adding a little bit of high-end saturation, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, a little bit audible distortion there. Let's listen in context.
And we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting
About 2 decibels saved. Right there.
Yep. 2 dB saved, no real audible difference. Now the snare, same thing.
Use a different clipper. Just to show you guys that like a different tool. What's this guy? Hard clip. It's got to be the most powerful clipper in my arsenal.
It's insane. How much are you saving there? There's really no audible
Like
difference.
6 decibels.
6 dB. And
Yeah,
it's really
check it out.
crazy.
So about -8 without, and then with. -13.
No real audible difference. Crazy plugin.
Does it well. And then we've got to check our wave observer.
Now let's look again.
And we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning, and we all better run, for we can't get out. Getting trapped in the dirt of a desperate search, and no one can hear our cries. London's burning.
Let's just turn off the vocals so you guys can really see what's going on here. Should see those peaks coming down slightly. Like look right up here at -6 and notice how much higher they are sitting above that -6 line when I have them off. Come on. Basically all sitting under that -6 line, right? Make sense? You guys seeing slash you shouldn't be hearing the difference, but you should be seeing the difference.
And
That's
this
the
will
point.
and this will save your mastering engineer a lot of headaches to have to deal with that stuff on a stereo file as opposed to in the mix.
Right.
That's the whole point. To be kind to your mastering engineers. They're there to help you take it to the moon. So wonderful, great session today. Thanks everybody. Vocals tomorrow. It's going to be a deep dive session into vocals. We're going to make those things sound so expensive. I think we used
Yeah.
8 plugins?
On the whole mix today?
Maybe.
Sounds about right.
Maybe 10, 8 to 10 plugins on the whole mix, something like that. Only fix what you have to fix and enhance what you have to enhance. If it sounds good, it is good. Solve the problems you need to. Think about how much more intention we were able to work with. We pretty much just followed his notes from yesterday. There's a lot of power in that. This demystifies the mixing process and it emboldens you to make choices, move on, and be done, which you have to do both on a business side, but also for the objectivity of your ears. So be thinking about this stuff. Go try this stuff. That's your homework for tonight. You have a volume-only mix. Go in and add your frequencies, add your compression, add spatial processing if you feel it needs it. Try the buckets. See how it goes. Feel free to post that mix to the school group. If you missed some of this, watch the replay in the school group. That'll be posted here in a couple of hours. In the meantime, have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Thanks, Jake. Wonderful work today. Thanks all of you for participating. Great questions and great helping each other in the chat. I notice all of you doing it. Have a good one, y'all. See you later.